Yep. Okay.
All right, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I hope you had a great lunch. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Perry Barber started umpiring Little League Baseball with her identical twin sister Warren in 1981, back when women on the diamond were few and far between. In the 4 decades since that fateful day when she called her first strike, Perry has umpired every level of amateur and professional baseball all over the world, including major league exhibitions in the United States and Japan, the fabled Cape Cod League, which we discussed earlier, Division I college ball, the Independent Atlantic League, and many international competitions abroad. Her goal now is to ensure that women umpires who follow in her plate shoes will have a gynocentric infrastructure of support and upward progress that until now has been lacking, so that they too can one day defer to the robots. So without further ado, Perry Barber, everybody, coming to us live from Florida.
All right. There are no robots here, thankfully. But very happy to say there are 6 of us women umpires at this camp, which is always a thrill for me because when I started umpiring in 1981, women were a rarity. I mean, I know there was one umpiring in professional baseball, Pam Postema, if people remember her. She was there all by herself for 13 years in professional baseball. And as soon as another one went to school in I think it was 1989, and got a job out of umpire school, Pam had served her usefulness and she was given her release. And that has been baseball's pattern for the last 50 years, since a woman named Bernice Guerra went to court and got the restrictions that up until that time had barred not just women, but men who did not meet the height and weight requirements at that time, which were pretty restrictive. So a lot of men owe their professional umpiring careers to Bernice Guerra, as well as women. But she was the first woman to work in the modern era. There was a woman named Amanda Clement who worked back in the early 20th century, who's my personal hero. She could have been American League umpire. I don't know if the tales are apocryphal or not about Ban Johnson having been so impressed by her umpiring in the Midwest. She was very famous and made enough money umpiring to put herself through college, which was also unusual for a young woman to do back then in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But between Amanda and Bernice, that's almost 70 years. And then Bernice worked one game and decided that she had done what she set out to do. And then the next one to come along was Christine Wren. A few years later, she lasted 2 seasons. And then Pam got a job in I believe I had just gotten to umpire school in 1982 when she was promoted to AAA. And she'd already been in pro ball for 6 years at that point. So they elevated her very, very slowly, as they are wont to do. There are actually 2 women in pro ball right now, and they're doing the same thing. They're just promoting them very, very slowly, and certainly out of sync with the regular metronome of, say, a male umpire's trajectory through the minor leagues, which is usually 2 seasons, and then they either are promoted or they're given their release. The 2 that are in pro ball, the 2 women, Jen Paul and Emma, who is going to be umpiring home plate at this championship game today. She was nice enough to drive from Minnesota. I mean, who would think of such a thing? Driving from Minnesota to come to Florida with her dog, Tobin, who is also with us. And Emma will be umpiring the plate today. And we also have the 2 other women, Greta Lang Henry, who went to umpire school and got a job 2 years ago, but had yet to work her first professional game. And, Isabella Ross, who worked last year. She got a job last, worked her year. So among the 4 of us, 3 of us have worked professional baseball. The other one was supposed to, but still hasn't. So that's a pretty rare occurrence the obscure footnote of history of women umpiring in baseball. But it's going to be fun. And for those of you who don't know, this is a fantasy camp, and the Red Sox are one of only two camps that has a fantasy camp devoted only to women. And that's because the women demanded it. And I think it's very cool that the Yankees have a women's camp, but they don't allow the women to also go to the men's camp if they want, if they think that their skills are up to, the level of playing with the men. And there are some women whose skills are definitely there. But this is a camp for women only, and the Red Sox have this camp for the women. They also, some of the women go to the men's camp, which starts tomorrow at the same facility. So it's a seamless transition from the women to the men. And it's just so great that they had originally had scheduled 6 teams, but because of COVID, they lost a lot of players who either didn't want to come for one reason or another, or couldn't because of all the mishigas with the travel now. So we're down to 4 teams, and everybody who is here is vaccinated and just happy as, clams to be here in Florida, where the weather has been beautiful and there's baseball and the sound of the leather hitting the wood, and there's just nothing like it. And pardon me if I seem to be gloating, but I feel my privilege, and I want to share it with all of you. I don't know how many of you are watching nothing but white out your window. It snowed in New York, where I'm from, yesterday, and I think it's supposed to snow again tomorrow. The Northeast has been slammed with some pretty nice snowstorms the last couple of weeks, and I escaped that. I'm officially a snowbird. I have been for I don't know, I guess ever since I started umpiring, really, because I grew up in New York City with my twin sister Warren and our older brother Rocky. And my sister and I went to a private school in New York where we were not geared toward athletics at all. Everything was about getting good grades and getting into a good college and having a fairly conventional life after that. I think, maybe having a career of some sort, but eventually settling down, getting married, and raising children. So thankfully, my twin sister did all that for me, so I didn't have to. I'm married to baseball, and I call myself ecstatically solo, and I'm a road warrior. I travel to tournaments all year round, me and my Prius and my cat Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Oh yes, Ryan just Ryan, I don't like to reveal all of my enchanting secrets all at once, so I don't want to overload anybody with my queenliness here. But yes, I am a Jeopardy champion, but a one-time champion, a very modest one-time champion, a long time ago, actually, on the original Jeopardy with Art Fleming and Don Pardo. I was one of the youngest champions they had at the time, back in 1972. The show went on the air in 1963 when I was 10 years old. And my twin sister and I played sick so we could stay home from school and watch the first episode, because we knew it would be a game changer for us. And it was. I've hardly missed an episode in however many years it's been on the air now, and gone through 3 different hosts, or 4, I guess, if you include May and Bialik. But yeah, I was a Jeopardy champion a long time ago. And the funny thing was, I actually bear a very unusual distinction for anybody that's been on Jeopardy, because the usual pattern is to win twice and lose once, because once you lose, you're done. Or win once and lose once. Well, I won once and I lost twice. And the reason I did that was because I won in 1972 when I was 19 years old. I was pitted against a couple of adults and I just won my game. And I went back and defended my championship, and I lost that game rather ignominiously, but so I won and I lost. And then because the show had gone off the air and then come back on in 1978 under a new production company with a new host, Alex Trebek. I was permitted to go back on the new version, which I did in 1988. And they had completely revamped the buzzer system. The original Jeopardy, you used to be able to buzz in anytime, even while the host was reading the answer. So you had people that would, get the question before the host had even finished reading it. But the way they changed it is that at home you can't see, there's a light around the screen that goes on. Presumably, the instant that the host finishes reading the answer, he will be speaking, he or she will be speaking, and then finish speaking, and boom, the light goes on. And that's the instant at which contestants are permitted to ring in. When you see them doing this with their buzzers, that's called ringing in. And if you ring in a split second before that light goes on, or sometimes even after the light goes on, because it's a human being that pushes the button that turns the light on, and if you're going by your own instincts and just listening to the voice and buzzing in the instant that it reads, and the person pushing the button to turn the light on is a split second slow, you do what's called locking yourself out. And that's when you see people going like this, because you're not permitted to ring back in for a quarter of a second. And in Jeopardy time, that is an eternity. It's impossible. To suppress that urge to keep doing that is almost impossible. Human nature dictates that I must keep doing it. I have to. I'm going to get in, but it doesn't work that way. And that's why you see people doing that, going crazy with the buzzers. And that's unfortunately what happened to me my third game. I got frustrated because the fellow on my left was going for his fifth win. Back then that was the maximum, and so had the buzzer timing down to a science. And I got about 2 minutes to practice on it. And I mean, he probably was smarter than me too. I mean, I admit it was not my finest hour, but I went down in flames. So I have the unusual distinction of having won once and lost twice on Jeopardy. And unfortunately, I've tried out and been accepted to go back on and been told at the 11th hour 3 times already. And they strung all of us contestants who had been on the Alex Trebek version along for 34 years, thinking that once he was no longer the host, that we would be allowed to go back on. But that's not the case. I'm still not allowed to go back on. So I just tried out for the show The Chase that Ken Jennings is one of the hosts on, and I'll keep you all posted about what happens with that. So that's my sordid quiz show past. It's actually how I've financed my profligate lifestyle since I started umpiring. And before that, some of you may know that I was a bit of a rock and roll. I was mostly a background singer, but I was also a solo performer, just me and my guitar singing songs that I wrote. And I was lucky enough to get hooked up with some agents who sent me out as the opening act for some pretty big bands like Bruce Springsteen, a guy you may have heard of him, and Hall and Oates, and Billy Joel. And it's amazing that they're all still very popular, 50 years later. Incredible. And I got to open shows for them back in the mid 70s before I started umpiring. But once I started umpiring in 1981, everything else went on the back burner for me. It was just like falling madly in love and devoting myself to my new bride without question. And that's basically what happened. And some people still ask me all the time, why did you decide to become an umpire? Well, I didn't decide. Umpiring basically found me, and it was my mother who recognized something in me that to this day I don't think I ever would have recognized in myself. That was a better, stronger person than I was at the time, that was just yearning to emerge. And she fixed on umpiring as the way for that to happen for me. And I don't know if I ever would have thought of umpiring as something that I should do or that I would want to do or become even halfway good at doing if she hadn't suggested it to me. And she was the one who steered me towards it. I owe her everything, because without umpiring, my life would be so different. I don't know what I'd be doing now. I don't think I'd still be in the music business. That was fun while it lasted, but I wasn't very ambitious. I just liked having fun and being around creative, fun people who smoked a lot of weed, but it was the 60s and 70s. So after that, I became an umpire, and umpires get drug tested, especially the ones in pro ball. But we're not all straight-laced, narrow-minded, stuck in the mud with their rods stuck up our tuchuses. Umpires are basically a very fun bunch. And I've been very, very fortunate over 40. This will be my 42nd year, if you can believe that, even though I took off 2021 because of COVID. So technically it's my 41st season, but really I started in 1981 in the Little League in California at my mother's urging. And so it's 42 years now. And I'll tell you what, because I had grown up in New York, I did not learn how to drive until 2 years earlier, 1976. My mother hired somebody to teach me how to drive, but I still didn't have a car because growing up in New York, we have public transportation. I didn't need to learn how to drive or to have a car. But once I started extending my visits with her out in California, she got a little tired of chauffeuring me around. So I learned how to drive, but I still didn't have a car. So when I started umpiring, I was 27 years old, and my mother drove me to my first Little League game at 27, bless her heart. She sat there in the stands, and it was probably like a comedy of errors, because I had the best of intentions, and I had called up the Little League, which had placed an ad in the local paper out in Palm Springs, where my mother was living at the time. And I thought I was doing something noble by volunteering my services for, I think they paid the umpires $12 per game back then, a magnificent sum. But it was never about the money for me. It was about the fun and the enjoyment. And I had so recently fallen in love with baseball only about a year before that. In 1970, actually a few years earlier than that, I started reading about baseball as a history subject because I had a friend when I opened shows for Bruce Springsteen back in the mid 1970s. Before Bruce was huge, he was a cult figure, but he just had one album out back then. So he wasn't, like a superstar like he has been since then. But his booking agent became one of my best friends, a guy named Barry Bell. And he lived in a little apartment just a few blocks from where I lived in Manhattan. And his sister eventually moved there, and we were all very close back then. And Barry was always challenging me to baseball trivia, because he knew I'd been a Jeopardy champion, and people were always challenging me to trivia. And most categories I can do pretty well, but baseball, I knew absolutely nothing because of my background going to private school in New York and having little interest in spectator type athletics. I just didn't have any interest in that. But once I fell in love with baseball as a subject to study about and learn, like you read about a subject in school, because my sole driving force was to beat my friend Barry Bell at baseball trivia. And eventually I got pretty good at baseball trivia and started going to games about a year after that, because being a New Yorker, I had to decide, am I a Mets or am I a Yankees? And I had a boyfriend back then who eventually abandoned me because he saw the writing on the wall and realized that baseball was more important than he was at some point. But he did take me to my first Mets and Yankees games. And this was 1979, when the Yankees were coming off a streak of, 3 World Series in a row and great teams, great players. And the Mets were, although they had individually a collection of very talented players, they were just together as a team. They never gelled, shall we say, but they somehow were very endearing. And so I became a National League fan. And when I decided to go to umpire school, that's the umpire school I decided to go to, was run by a National League umpire, Harry Wendelstedt. Some of you are old enough to remember old Harry. His son Hunter is now running the umpire school. It's a family business, happy to say. And Hunter, every year I see him at somewhere or other, and he came up to my knees when my first year at umpire school in 1982. He was, I think, 6 years old, something like that. But now every time I see him, he asks me, do you have any women? I want them to come to school. I want to be the first one to put a woman out in pro ball. And that, to me, oh my gosh, you can't imagine how great that makes me feel, because it was such a struggle when I was at umpire school to get the instructors to understand that I never felt that they judged me or other women that went there on an equal footing with the men. We always had to be 10 times better than the men to be judged anywhere near equal to them. And, most of us have accepted that. It's changing now as more and more of us enter into the pathways and the funnels that lead to jobs at the top echelons of umpiring, or now in other arenas of baseball, such as coaching. The Red Sox had Bianca Smith here a few days ago talking to the women, which they just were so thrilled about. She is amazing. I mean, she has multiple degrees. She is so brilliant and so smart and so over-educated and prepared for the job she does for the Red Sox. But she just loves what she does. She loves imparting her wisdom, her knowledge about what goes into a good, healthy swing. That she teaches hitting to the minor leaguers. She's, I think, like a roving instructor. But she was here at this camp helping the women improve their swings too. And it was just absolutely amazing to see her interact with them, and just such a joy. And to me, that I feel lucky in a way that I never made it as a professional umpire. The only professional experience I have is during spring training, when I work every level of professional baseball. And when I was on staff with the Atlantic League from 1998 until 2001. And that's considered professional baseball because it's independent league. And they had some pretty good ex-pros or players that got promoted to, we had Jose Canseco and his brother Ozzie, who was a bit more off the wall than Jose, if you can believe that. But both of them were very respectful towards me, which I always appreciated. But the Atlantic League was a lot of fun. And I was there on the ground floor. So I enjoy seeing the success that it's enjoying now. When I was a supervisor, I had to convince guys to drive from Atlantic City to Nashua, because that's a pretty far drive. Now they fly them to Texas and I guess South Carolina. They're living the good life. But I feel good about laying the groundwork for that infrastructure in that league. And umpiring has just been an amazing journey for me, not just what I've been doing on the field as an umpire. And I think I have at least 8,000 games under my belt now. Not all of them 9-inning games, certainly, but some of them, 11 or 13. So I guess it evens out in the end, because my purview is not professional baseball. Like I said, it's been mostly high school, college. I did college ball for 25 years. The Cape Cod League, and the Alaska League, which are both college wooden bat leagues. And other than that, I've done youth ball, travel ball, adult men's leagues. I work for a guy named Scott Green. Some of you may know him. He runs an organization called Play at the Plate, and he puts on tournaments at major league and minor league ballparks that are always a lot of fun. Very nicely run. And now the last few years, I've gotten heavily involved with women's baseball, which a lot of people don't know even exists, but yes, it does. There's a thriving circuit, even here in the United States, of girls and women playing baseball. And if you've never seen girls or women playing baseball, I can't recommend highly enough that you do, because it just makes your heart sing. Because the women are just so grateful to be out here after being shunned and spurned for so long. And even in 2022, 2021, a lot of us know, parents now of young girls that are told still, once they age out of Little League, no, you should go play softball. You don't try out for the junior varsity high school baseball team. And why? But girls and women are making inroads. And for those of you that, sometimes I understand people think that the entry of women into what are traditionally regarded as men's sports is a zero-sum game, that our participation somehow means that a man somewhere is being deprived of his opportunity to participate. But actually, that is not true. First of all, if the man wants to participate, he can find somewhere to participate. Women really have to look hard and sometimes create their own opportunities. And the opportunities that we create do not take away any opportunities from the men. There are always going to be what I call outliers, women of extraordinary talent and skill that will wind up playing with or against men on men's teams, what are traditionally called men's teams. I see women playing in the MSBL, the Men's Senior Baseball League out in Arizona in October. And when I was doing the Roy Hobbs in Florida, which are just a lot of amateur teams that come in and play during October and November. And I've seen women, and the Roy Hobbs used to have a women's division. But that circuit of women players and coaches is growing and expanding rapidly. And to be a part of it and see it thriving and see the way women are taking charge of our own baseball destinies, I guess you would call it, is just so rewarding, because for so long things were just stagnant. And for me as an umpire, and to see things even regress up until about 5 years ago, when Emma and Jen Paul got their jobs in pro ball, I was really the only representative of professional baseball still working. All of the others, once they got released, they're not umpiring anymore. Ria Cortesio, who was the last one, got released in 20, I think it was 2007 or 8, and she made it to AA. But once she got too close to AAA, where minor league baseball would have lost control of her career, because once you get to AAA, umpires are regarded as property of Major League Baseball. So they can send them up and down between the major leagues as vacation umpires when the major league umpires go on vacation, which they all get 6 weeks vacation during the year. So that's a lot of opportunity for AAA guys to get in the practice that they need before they become full-time major league umpires. Because without that, easing into the role of major league umpire with the technology and learning, so many things are new. It takes a lot of patience and skill. And I think I could umpire. I have umpired Major League Baseball, but the other things are the things that would probably stymie me a little bit unless I had a lot of help from my partners. But umpiring a Major League Baseball game is a very, very specialized skill, and it takes a lot of practice just to get to that level. And once you get there, you have to undergo constant retraining too. Believe it or not, I know some of you don't believe it probably. You see umpires standing around on a dime and gaining weight while they're out there, but really that's not true. major and minor league baseball have made a pretty good effort. The last 10 years is when things started changing, I'm happy to say, when minor league baseball took over one of the umpire schools. And that now has changed too, because minor league baseball is now running what used to be called the academy, which is the descendant of what used to be the Jim Evans School. And before that, it was the Joe Brinkman School. And they were all American League umpires. That's a school that I didn't attend to, but it was running up in Vero Beach the last few years under the stewardship of a guy named Dusty Dellinger, who had been the supervisor of umpires for all of minor league baseball for a long time. And he took over running the school. But now the school is being taken over by Major League Baseball. As you know, Major League Baseball has taken everything that used to be branded minor league baseball. And it's very confusing. Umpires are still waiting to hear where the hell they're going to be this season, assuming this season even gets played. I mean, we have always been an afterthought. It's pretty criminal. And I've always chafed at the way minor league umpires are treated and expected to just be ready to, go at a moment's notice. And, which is ridiculous because umpires aren't robots. We need to feed and clothe and house ourselves. And to do that, we have to be making money. And to do that, we can't be sitting around. Oh, well, you know what? It was quiet up until now, but let me see, what time is it? It's 2:30. So things are going to start to get a little more active right around now, which is fine. If they get too noisy, you can just tell me and I'll move inside. But in a few minutes, something kind of special is going to happen. So I wanted you all to be in on that. So this is going to be a lot of fun. This is the championship game for the Boston Red Sox women's fantasy camp. There were 4 teams, and I'm not sure, they're all named after teams that were in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball. Whoops. Video was stopped. What happened? Safe driving. Hold on just a second. No. Hello, am I still on camera? Oh, there I am.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I see you now. Yeah.
Sorry, my phone fell off the grandstand here.
Oh, you're fine. It happens.
So yeah, we've got a 3:00 championship game, and all of the teams were named after teams in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. And the reason for that is because the woman whose brainchild this camp was, this is the 6th year. And so 6 years ago, a woman named Donna Eden Cohen walked up to me at Fenway South, which back then was JetBlue, and I was here for a spring training game. And she said, the Yankees have a women's fantasy camp. What, do you think the Red Sox should do one? And I said, hell yes. And just a few months later, it was a reality. Donna is just a wizard at making things happen and connecting people. It's just so inspiring to see her. And she also happens to be the I guess the agent is what you would say for 3 of the actual women that played in the All-American Girls. And their names are Maybelle Blair, Shirley Berkovich, and Mary Moore. And Maybelle is going to be turning 96, I think, next week. Wow. And Shirley is not that far behind her, but she'll probably tell you she's in her 70s or something. And Mary Moore was a legitimate Rockford peach. A lot of people who have seen the movie A League of Their Own at some point, or all the time, because it's always on TV somewhere, remember that the film was primarily about the Rockford Peaches, the team that played in Rockford, Illinois. And the team that they played against a lot was the Racine Bells, because that was the team that Dottie Hinson's sister Kit played on eventually. It was the Racine Bells once they got split up. So Shirley also played briefly for the Rockford Peaches. So we have 2 Rockford Peaches here and 1 Peoria Red Wing. And they are just so amazing. And I think there are probably I think about 40 players from that league that are still with us, still living. And to have them be here at this camp with the women and to see the effect, and I've seen them at some of Justine Siegel's camps for young girls. She has camps, tournaments for girls as young as 8 years old. And they just flock to Maybelle and Shirley. It is just so sweet to see the effect. They just love them to death. And they've been on Brian Kenny or based MLB TV a few times. If you've ever seen them or if ever have a chance to see them anywhere, they are just so much fun. And maybe they'll be out here at some point. I hope so. Because being able to hang out with them is truly a privilege, you know, because a lot of them are not going to be with us very much longer. Hell, I'm not going to be with us very much longer. I'm getting up there. You know, this is my 42nd year. I started when I was 20. Well, how old was I? 28. So you do the math. I'm going to be 69 in May. So, and I in my head, I'm 70. That's what I say. I'm 70. I'm just sort of preparing myself for the eventuality. I always think of that line in When Harry Met Sally, when Meg Ryan is weeping hysterically on the bed and Billy Crystal says, "What's wrong?" And she says, I'm going to be 30. And he says, "In 8 years." That's what it's like. So yeah, in 2 years, a year and a half, I'm going to be 70. But I feel like I'm, you know, I'm so lucky. Baseball keeps me young. And well, let's see. Hey, hold on. Hey, would you guys say hello to my Zoom viewers here? This is
Hi there.
this
Hi.
is Rich Gedman and Dave Smith of the Boston Red Sox.
How are you? Nice
So-
to see you, buddy.
Thanks.
Hi.
All right, thanks. Yeah, they're both here coaching, and they treat the women just like they do the men. They're just as tough on them. The only difference is they don't curse. They're very nice, so it's very nice. We do demand a little decorum, but it's just so much fun being here, and we're going to have a very interesting game. So anyway, I've been talking about me for all this time. Does anybody want to ask me anything, or you have any questions or comments? Or whoa, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, look who happens to be, wait, I have, hey, Shirley, look, here's Shirley. Say hi, Shirley.
Hi,
This is
how
Shirley
you doing?
Berkovich. Say hi to all the Saber Zoomers. Thank
Hi,
you.
guys. Take care.
All right.
Hi.
Shirley
Hello.
had a line in A League of Their Own. Say your line, Shirley.
Dottie, having you here is good luck.
There you go. She gets a residual for that. And here's Mary Moore. Mary is a Rockford Peach.
No, I'm
Oh.
a Battle Creek Bell.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
Battle
yeah.
Creek Bell.
yeah,
Oh,
Shirley's
sorry.
the Peach.
Okay, so what position did you play? Mary?
Second base.
Second base.
Yeah, how you doing?
All right. Mary took one for the team today.
Yeah,
The golf cart bit her.
yeah,
She had to get treated by the trainer.
right,
So she's here taking one for the team.
right.
So thank
All right,
you.
thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
All right.
And here's Maybelle. Maybelle's birthday is next week. How old are you going to be, Maybelle?
Only 95.
95. Oh, all right. 95 years young. So, and Maybelle pitched for the Peoria Red Wings, and they never recovered.
Right, they're still trying. Thanks, Barry.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Well, I love those ladies so much. No, I'm good. Thank you. And you know, they are out here all day, every day. That yesterday they were here for 8 hours with everybody else. They do not slack off. at all. It's unbelievable. I think it's because they all grew up on farms drinking raw milk. So I'm serious. I think that had something to do with their health and longevity. The ones that didn't smoke, they're still, amazing and full of energy and gung ho. So anyway, does anybody want to ask me anything? I see it's 2:40. Hi.
Hi, I was curious, what specifically do you think your mother thought you'd be good at about umpiring in particular? Like what traits in you and traits that are good for a good umpire that she pushed you that way?
Honestly, I've never thought of that. I'm not sure she really knew herself, because frankly, she half regretted it years later. She'd say, when are you gonna give me grandchildren? And I'd say, my sister did that, for you. But she never complained when I'd say, do you want to come down to spring training and watch me umpire the Mets? And when I took her to Japan in 1990, I had umpired in Japan, and I went back a couple of years to make commercials for a life insurance company. And they treated us like queens. And to be able to do that for my mother was very, very special for me. So, but I'm not sure, my mother was so unusual, and thank you for asking about her. Because she raised my brother and my sister and me. We were basically a matriarchal household. My father disappeared. He was out of the picture when we were very young, when I was 6 years old. She remarried briefly. She married a Nazi and went to court to have the marriage annulled because he was a Nazi, and she set a legal precedent to do it. It's a whole soap opera. But she was a very strong, determined woman, and set a very excellent example of leadership and, how to be not nasty or overbearing, but still, get people to respect you and, wrap them around you. She could do that. I mean, she could wrap people around her little finger, and my twin sister too. They both had a gift for that. I just was in awe of that. But anyway, I think she understood that there was something in me that I wanted, that I couldn't articulate at that time. And, maybe it had to do with the culture in which I was raised, which was, granted, it was late 50s, early 60s, which was kind of hippie flower child. And she was not that at all. She was hardcore conservative Republican, which back then was very different from what that means nowadays. But she was always very true and, ethical, and just had a great example. And she just figured out for me that umpiring was what would give my life purpose. Maybe she thought rock and roll, I was kind of drifting aimlessly. Like I said, I didn't really have any goals. I didn't want to become famous. My goal was always to be rich and obscure. And, the rich still hasn't worked out, but the obscure I'm working on. So it's going to happen someday. But my mother she was so remarkable to recognize something in me that would make me happy for the rest of my life. How often does that happen when you meet somebody or somebody that can do that for you? And my mother did that for me. So I was just very, very lucky about that. So thank you for asking. What is your name?
Oh, I'm Rayanne, down in Austin.
Thanks, Rayanne. Oh, I want to go to Austin someday. I know a lot of the musicians there. I'm friends with the Cosmic Cowboys
Oh,
who
yeah.
live there. Michael Murphy and Bob Livingston, and they were all my buddies back in the day. I was raised in the city, but I was raised in the city, but I'm a country music girl at heart. Seriously. Hi there. Who's that?
There's more questions.
I think Jim has the next question. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay.
Hi, Perry. I always like hearing umpires talk about sticky rule situations or real difficult things that happen. Can you think of anything like that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, Bob Stanley had a little bit of a question about an infield fly yesterday that was amused me, because my contention is that as learned as players are about the strategy and other aspects of baseball, very few of them actually ever really look at a rule book or study it. And so when they question an umpire about a rule, it always gives me a good laugh, shall we say. But yeah, Bob Stanley said he'd never seen an umpire call infield fly where the catcher wound up catching the ball. And, you know, my question was, well, why? Catcher's on the infield, that's an infield fly. You know, nothing unusual about that. Yeah, I guess I've seen it, you know, because I do a lot of strange baseball and he's used to polished professional baseball or something. But it was just kind of a funny comment to me. I've actually quizzed major league managers, given them a set of 4 questions about the infield fly rule, and very few of them have gotten more than even one question about infield fly correct. It's funny. The rule has different elements that people forget about. It's not just runners on first and second or first, second, and third, and the ball is popped up on the infield. There are other criteria that have to be fulfilled. Number 1, is the infielder under the ball ready to catch it with what we call ordinary effort? And that part of it is very subjective. The rest of it, you know, the situational part is subjective. Yeah, the rest of it is, you know, set in stone. But there are aspects of the rule that umpires have to use our judgment on, and that was what I guess confused Bob Stanley. He wasn't and he said the catcher wasn't under it ready to catch. And well, you know, at fantasy camp we give the fielders a little bit of leeway not to be, you know, ready like I got it, because, you know, they're not professional caliber players. So we let them, you know, sort of circle under it and still call infield fly. So, woo. So, yeah. So anyway, infield fly. The other one that people get confused about, obviously, is checked swing. And basically, the way umpires judge it is, did the hitter offer at the pitch? And if he or she did offer, did he withdraw the offer in time for it not to be an offer? And all of that, it has to be processed, obviously, in a split second. And most plate umpires like to take that call ourselves. We don't like to point down to first base or third base, depending on righty lefty, and ask our partners for help. But in pro ball, and I think in college now, they require the plate umpire to ask if the catcher or the manager says, ask your partner for help. But otherwise, I personally, 90 out of 100 times, I will take that call myself, even if I'm not sure. I would just rather not burden my partner with that call. If I'm wrong about it, I'll take the heat. I don't want my partner to take the heat because, you know, I called it one way and then maybe she decided, no, he didn't go. And then somebody gets on her instead of on me. You know what I mean? So, but I can't always do that, obviously, because like I said, we are obligated to ask for help when the catcher or the manager asks at certain levels of baseball. So. There are lots of other tricky rules. And we had a couple of time plays here today, which are always fun. When you have to decide if a run scores before the third out, which is not a force play, is made on the bases. And usually it's at second base, say a batter runner stretching a single into a double when a runner is scoring and they get the out at second, and you have to figure out, did that run score before the runner was tagged? And umpires train long and hard to be able to take all of that stuff into account and process it and be able to articulate it by using our bodies, obviously, to make the motions out or safe, and to explain it when somebody comes out to yell at us, that was a bad call, what are you doing here? Which actually doesn't happen all that often anymore, I'm happy to say. I like to think I've achieved a certain degree of proficiency, and so I don't get that many arguments anymore, but it's always fun. It's always a lesson in how to work with human nature so that a confrontation on the field ends the way I want it to, instead of the way the other person who started it wants to, which sometimes is to get tossed from a ball game. And believe it or not, umpires don't go looking to toss ball players, because that means we have to write a report, and we don't like paperwork, and we don't even like doing it digitally online. It's a pain in the rear. So our goal is to give players and coaches and managers every opportunity to stay in a baseball game, not to get thrown out. But sometimes they just cross a line and they got to go. And sometimes you recognize they're doing it for a certain specific purpose, and they're not going to relent. And, you know, if it's 95 degrees and a manager gives me a hard time and I say, I'm not tossing you, you're staying out here and suffering in this heat. If I am, you are too. And, you know, then he says something like the magic word, he's got to go. So, but we don't go looking to toss players or managers.
Great,
Most
thank
of
you.
Okay, I see Peter has a question. Peter?
Yeah, Perry, this is wonderful. My question is, when are you going to write your book?
I've been working on it for about 25 years, but you know, I'm busy. I have games to umpire, so I kind of get distracted. But I'm good at short stories, so I'm working on a short story for the Saber magazine. So, and I'll get around to the book when I'm dead. Probably I'll get around to writing my book. So in the meantime, I'm just enjoying sharing these Zooms with everybody and being able to spread the joys of umpiring and encourage people to not just be nice to the umpires, because you understand us a little bit better after talking to me or listening to me, but because you recognize umpiring as, like I do, as, you know, something that we do not for ourselves, but because we feel like we're contributing something out there, and we all want to do our best. Obviously, nobody wants to go out here and make a mistake on purpose. I mean, that's ridiculous to assume that. And most of us really just have so much fun, and half the fun is working hard, you know, to make it look like we care about what we're doing out here, and that we're not slacking off, and that we're paying attention and putting good energy into the game, and being like Bruce Lee, like being like water, and letting knowledge become self-knowledge, and learning from the experience of every interaction that we have out there with every ball player, every manager, so that what we experience with our families and friends in our daily lives improves as well, so that we learn how to navigate, you know, arguments or confrontations, so that they don't end in anger and dissolution, but end in resolution and, you know, peace, if not peace, at least détente, and so that everybody can go about their business and, you know, feel like they did something and were able to enjoy something in a safe space. And I'm all about safety. And when people ask me as an umpire, what's your most important job or duty as an umpire, I always say it's making sure that wherever I umpire is a safe space for people to play and umpire. Oh, look at this. My partner's sneaking up on me. Here's Greta Lang Henry. Hello. Carrying the baseballs, and Bella Robb and Emma Charlesworth Seiler. And
Emma.
that's Debbie. We all say hi to Debbie. Hi, all you Zoomers out there. So I guess this is my signal now. I have to go, because otherwise they'll kick my tuchus. They ride me all the time. So they're a tough bunch to keep happy. So I want to say thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
very
For
much.
hosting me. And I hope I get to see you all again soon, and enjoy the rest of the day. And thanks again for inviting me to be here.
Thank you so much,
You
Perry.
know,
Please,
should I just
please come
leave
down
the
to
phone
Austin at
on?
some
You
point.
can all watch the game while we're working if you want. I'll leave it over here, or I'll turn it off. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Barry.
you very
All
much.
right. All right. Thanks everybody. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.